Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I wanted to share a quick video with 5 ways that you could save money as a crafter. These ideas you may have heard before, and not all these ideas may be for you, but hopefully a few resonate, give you something to think about, etc. So one of the first things that I recommend, and I've shared this many times on my channel, is I've pretty much stopped buying foam tape, and instead I just take my thick cardstock scraps and I tape them together. So I cut a word die out of this because I wanted to layer a few together. I want a thicker effect with them. And so these left like some weird spaces. I could probably die cut something out of it, but I'm not a big fan of saving my scraps. I wasn't ever good at it. I was never good at remembering to go look for them. So what I've started doing is just taping them together, and it creates just a little bit of thickness, just a tiny bit of dimension. This is 110-pound cardstock, and I do 2 layers. 3 layers also looks great. If you like it thicker, you might need more layers, or if you have thinner cardstock, you might need more layers. But for me, I think that this eliminates something that I already have on hand. It gets rid of some waste and allows me to put it behind, give my images a little dimension. What's also nice is because it's a very thin amount of dimension, your things are less likely to get crushed in the mail, and your items are more recyclable. When the card is finished, if there's foam on it, that can't go in the the paper recycling. But and if you have gems and stuff, it won't either. But if if you're mostly a cardstock card, consider that this would continue to allow your recipient to recycle your card. So. Okay, my next tip is to consider getting a digital cutting machine. I've had my scan and cut for a number of years. I really like it. Is it always as easy as coordinating dies? No. Is it sometimes easier? Yes, because I can cut more things and I don't have to tape each little die down and make sure it's just in the right spot. And here's a digital stamp. There's no coordinating die for that. I can make it whatever size I want, etc. But I was still able to cut it out with this nice border. It looks like it was cut with a die cut, and I was able to use my scan and cut. Things to consider about the scan and cut. It's a big initial upfront investment, but over time, if you're buying a lot of coordinating dies, it will save you some money. Also, you will need to replace the mat. There are some ways to make the mat last a little longer. Wiping it down with a baby wipe sometimes brings some stick back to it. Using some tape to tape down the corners of the cardstock panel that you're trying to cut can sometimes help it last a little longer, but you will need to replace it. I find I probably use a new one every 6 or so months. But a new mat is about the cost of 1 coordinating die set. So if you buy, even I would say 5 or 10 coordinating dies a year, you probably would save money. So just something to consider. And also you can cut words and basic shapes, so you could eliminate some other die purchases if you want. If you like coordinating dies, great, keep supporting the companies and buy those coordinating dies. Okay, so my next money saving tip, kind of related to that idea of digital, so if you're comfortable with digital, is to consider digital stamps and digital cut files. So again, this was a digital stamp. It's from Le Petit Market on Etsy. I will link below a few digital stamp companies that I like, just in case you've never been exposed to them. But I'm also going to link Kitten Clowder, which is a Facebook group. She does online coloring classes, but she also has a Facebook group where she shares a lot of digital stamps, and on her website has a couple of resources for how to best use digital stamps. So if you're interested, I think that'd be a great resource, so I'll share that. But you would consider that average stamp set, like this one, these are all the images that came with the stamp set, and there's also some sentiments. Beautiful, love the stamp set, but this is $15 for the stamp set, and then you get these images and they're this size, and that's that. Here is a digital stamp set from Isabella Christina, who again, I'll link. She's makes some really cute stamps. This is a cute little crafting bunnies stamp set. And you get all of these images and these sentiments for $3 and some change. So very big difference in the cost, and you can do a lot more. You can, layer these together, and obviously you can layer these together too. Like you can stamp and mask and all that, but you can do a lot of that with digital stamps as well. So check out those resources if that sounds interesting to you. There's also a lot of free digital stamps out there, so if you don't have the budget right now, and you want a couple new images to color, it might be something to consider. And one more shout out for a digital stamp company I like, Sweet November Stamps. They recently just started their independent digital store, and Amy Young, who makes the stamps, also does a lot of live coloring and can share some tips that way, so I'll link her as well. Okay, and then my next tip is about cleaning. I see recommendations for baby wipes, and I know not everyone uses them, and so this is, some of you are going to think it's a no-brainer, but I don't understand baby wipes for cleaning because they cost something, even if they're not very much. And now sometimes when you have a big mess, or sometimes there's techniques involved with baby wipes, but for general cleanup, if I was had distress ink on my surface, I'm going to spritz it with my water bottle and wipe it with my dish towel. A stamp cleaner is also great, or a microfiber cloth, a reusable stamp chamois of some sort, because also baby wipe brands like leave lint behind on your surface. I don't know. It's just, I think, well, yes, this stamp chamois will cost you something, and your spray bottle and your dish towel could cost something. If you were only using baby wipes over time, it certainly would cost a bit more. And things like this spray bottle, I use this for techniques. It's already going to be at my desk. I actually do have 2 spray bottles though. This one is full of isopropyl alcohol, and this one's just regular water. This is great for distress techniques. This is great for like alcohol ink techniques, but also if I'm coloring and I make a mess with my alcohol inks or my Copics, because Copics are alcohol based, then I can clean it up with this as well. I don't wash this dish towel very often. It's dedicated to the craft room. Nobody's going to be using this in the kitchen. Okay. My last tip, and this is another one of those like, well, maybe it involves some investment kind of tips, but is to consider reusable supplies. Refillable supplies. Copic markers are refillable. You can get an ink refill. Now, right now, there's some difficulty with the ink refills. They're switching the packaging. It's a little bit complicated. But this applies to more than just Copic inks or Copic markers. It also applies to your inks. Some inks have refills available for them. And I would, if you're going to go with an ink, and yes, look for one that's refillable, but also consider how popular that product is. Has it been around on the market for a while? Because then it's more likely that you'll be able to get the refills when you need them. Because I don't necessarily recommend buying the refills right away. I use most of my Copic. This one happens to not be open yet. But I usually don't buy a Copic ink refill till I feel like I'm getting low. I try not to be like scratching the end of it, because you can damage the tips if your marker gets too low on ink. So I try not to be too harsh on that. But anyway, I bought a lot of distress ink refills, and I haven't really used them yet. I would have, I wound up going with the oxides, and so that wasn't a good example of how to save money. I should have stuck with either just the plain distress inks because I had the refills, or actually I did sell some of my old distress inks to kind of cover the cost of the oxides. But with the oxides, for example, I'm not buying the refills right now until I know that I need them, but I also know it's a very popular product, and so if I don't need the refills for 5 years, they'll probably still be available. So that's something to consider as well. Also, think about how your inks can do multiple purposes. Like, distress inks aren't the best for solid stamping, but I've stamped plenty of sentiments with them, and so I don't necessarily need also blue dye inks, or like, yes, I'm going to have like my favorite black inks, and I might have a couple choices there, but just consider that you might not always need as many ink colors as you're tempted to buy. So that's obviously a way to save money, is just to not buy things. Anyway, so think about refillable supplies. And those are my 5 tips. So use cardstock instead of foam tape. Just double it up, use up your scraps. Then I had the tip of using refillable supplies, considering a scan and cut or other digital cut machine. Consider using digital stamps or digital cut files for words that your machine can then cut. And skip the baby wipes and find some reusable cleaners. Maybe have a bottle of water and a bottle of alcohol if you're someone who likes to use alcohol inks or alcohol-based markers as well. So I hope one of those tips, or maybe all of them, were helpful to you or gave you some perspective. And thank you so much for taking the time to join me. You can subscribe to my channel for other card making videos, and I'll leave you some links to that I mentioned in the video description below. Bye!